Ugh, bloody hell. Some people think this show is about cars. It isn't. The cars just happen to be part of the story. This show is about people. The people we meet, the friends we make, the roads we share, and the conversations that somehow become memories. It's about early mornings and late evening, about laughter echoing through the garages, about finding community in places you never expected. And every now and then, it's about slipping behind the wheel of a car that you love and disappearing down an empty road for no reason at all, not to get somewhere, just to remember who you are. Because in the end, it's never really about the cars. It's about a life worth driving. Well, this is awkward. 46 of you may recognize this car. That's because it was the subject of our very first episode of A Life Worth Driving. And after recently revisiting that episode, I came to a troublesome conclusion. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. The camera work was questionable. The editing was abysmal. The audio occasionally sounded like it had been recorded inside a running dishwasher. And according to YouTube, approximately 46 of you people experienced the entire thing. So to those 46 people, thank you. I honestly believe I probably know several of you personally. The funny thing is, the car wasn't the problem. The Shelby deserved better. So rather than deleting the original episode and pretending that it had never happened, I decided to leave it right where it is, as a permanent monument to my learning curve. And we're going to do it again. Same Shelby, better story, maybe a better host. We'll work on them. I can still remember the moment that I fell in love with the Shelby Mustang. I was standing trackside watching a 1962 Ferrari GTO and a 1965 Shelby GT350 running together. The Ferrari was art, elegant, beautiful, almost effortless. The Shelby was something else entirely. The Shelby looked like it was trying to start an argument, and for reasons I still can't quite explain, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. That was the moment. The hook was set. A few years later, I found this very car sitting in a wrecking yard. It was stripped, it was damaged, it was rusty. It was missing nearly everything that even made it a car. Most people saw it as a pile of rust and missing parts. I saw potential, which, as every car guy knows, is often the first symptom of poor financial decision making. But I brought it home anyway, and for years the adventure wasn't driving it. The adventure was finding it. An original hood was bought from a gentleman in the Bay Area. An original T10 aluminum case transmission came from Wisconsin. A driveline sitting on a farm in Central Valley covered in years of yellow crop dust. An original set of Ray Brown seatbelts and an original R-model vented rear window was hidden away in Los Angeles in a warehouse owned by a man who had a few of Steve McQueen's cars quietly lurking in the shadows. It seemed that every single part had a story. Every story had a person, and every person became part of this car. People look at restorations and see finished products. I remember phone calls, road trips, introductions, friendships. The hunt was half of the fun, maybe more. And for the most part, I restored the car as Shelby would have intended. Proper high-po motor mounts, proper 4-speed, correct Kelsey Hayes brakes, a set of original Ray Brown belts, vintage racing seats, axle limiting straps, override traction bars, the little details that made these cars special. And then I did what every driver-centric enthusiast eventually does. I ignored my good judgment and ordered a set of Twin-Paxtons. The result isn't historically correct, but neither am I. And while this isn't a real GT350R, I've always loved the purposeful look of the R models. So I borrowed a little inspiration, and here we are. Is it perfect? Hell no. We'll leave perfection to people with deeper pockets, greater skills, and considerably more patience than I'll ever possess. This car wasn't built to sit under lights. It was built to run, and run hard. And thanks to my geographical advantageous location here in California, there is no shortage of roads willing to participate in that experiment. I remember meeting a gentleman who bought a brand new Shelby GT350 from Galpin Motors in the summer of 1965. He told me that he had made it 65 miles before collecting his first speeding ticket on the Grapevine heading north. 65 miles, not ownership, a warranty claim. 60 years later, I understand exactly how that happens. The effect a Shelby has on a person behind the wheel has remained remarkably consistent. For a very long time, this car sat quietly in storage through much of my first marriage. Life happened as it does. Then one day, it was time to bring it home. To start a brand new chapter. I still remember opening the storage unit door with my future second wife standing beside me. She looked at the Shelby, and then she looked at me. She looked back at the Shelby. The expression on her face required absolutely no interpretation. It was somewhere between concern and a detailed financial audit. Getting the car under the trailer by myself in the rain was a special kind of misery as well. That struggle was real. The language was colorful, but eventually we got it loaded and brought it home. It certainly tested my new love and my welding skills. But here we are, almost 25 years later. The Shelby's still here, the marriage is still here, and these days, when the garage door rolls open, she smiles. As it turns out, she figured out something that took me years to understand. The car was never really about the car. It was about the joy, the people, the stories, and the adventures. Over the decades, this Shelby has become a business card, an introduction, a passport. It's taken me places I never expected to go. This car introduced me to racers, collectors, mechanics, characters, people I would have never met otherwise. I've stood in garages I had no business standing in. I've seen collections that few people ever get to see. I've shared meals and stories with extraordinary people. Last year, those roads led me to Monterey Historics, not as a spectator, not as a ticket holder, but as a crew helper supporting Bob on his 1965 Shelby race car. That opportunity didn't happen by accident. It happened because I spent decades paying attention, living with these cars, working on them and driving them, learning from them. And this August, I'll be doing it all again, standing in the paddock, listening to vintage V8s thunder around front straights at Laguna Seca, still amazed where this journey has taken me. Sometimes I think about the day I found this old junker sitting forgotten in a wrecking yard. If you'd told me then what lay ahead, I never would have believed you. The friendships, experiences, the opportunities, the adventures, not bad for a car that was headed to a scrap pile. And not bad for a car whose first episode only managed 46 views. Some places ask you to slow down. Villa Argento Carriage House asks you to arrive. To disappear for a little while into great roads, long evenings, and the company of people who still understand the romance of driving. Here, mornings begin with the sound of engines warming beneath the trees. Then it's out towards the national parks, climbing through the glorious, endless series of corners on the way up to Yosemite or Sequoia National Parks, where the roads seem to unfold forever beneath the tires. Afternoons disappear somewhere beyond the next canyon, and evenings end beneath the carriage house lights with stories, laughter, and one final glass poured among friends. So schedule the drive, stay a while, bring the car that speaks to your soul. Villa Argento Carriage House, a sanctuary for the love of driving. Find your people here. Some Saturday mornings feel productive, others feel important, and then there are the rare few that simply remind you why you fell in love with this hobby in the first place. This morning was one of those. I pointed the Shelby towards a small local show here in Clovis, California, Gateway to Heaven. If you ask me, the Shelby itself arrived with all the composure of a distinguished gentleman who had accidentally consumed way too much espresso. It spent most of the drive announcing its presence through a series of enthusiastic backfires at moments that could be described as socially inconvenient. The car may have been slightly out of tune. The owner is still under investigation. Once I arrived, the real entertainment began. There I met Ollie, with his beautiful red and black 1957 Ford Fairlane Victoria. Within minutes, I was learning Ford trivia I didn't know I needed in my life. Fairlane, it turns out, was the name of the street that Henry Ford lived on, and Victoria was the name of his daughter. You come for the cars, and you leave with a history lesson. A little further down the field was Mike Weaver and his lovely wife, beside a gorgeous 427 Cobra. We shared stories, mutual friends, and the sort of conversations that seemed to happen effortlessly around these old cars. I was also lucky enough to spend time with Marlo and Janet, now retired and thoroughly enjoying the rewards of 7 grandchildren, vintage truck people through and through. The kind of folks who make you think retirement may actually be a pretty good idea. Then there was Niall King and his stunning 36 Ford Coupe, a car with enough presence to stop you in your tracks. He laughed as he told me he used to drive to these events in one of his friend's cars before eventually deciding he'd had enough of that and he built his own. That's the sort of determination this hobby quietly celebrates. I ran into my neighbor Carl, who is a true muscle car guy, made a handful of new friends, and I spent time with Ricardo, who was serving hot dogs from a grill with all the enthusiasm of a man who had accidentally become the unofficial mayor of this event. Ricardo also owns a 1965 C10 and is preparing for a long road trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico, for the big truck gathering there. He's got fresh air conditioning and a fresh rebuilt engine, and he's going complete with his original old toolbox in the bed just in case. Because some journeys deserve to be experienced from behind the wheel rather than viewed through the windshield of a tow vehicle. By the time the morning had ended, I realized something. The older I get, the less I remember every horsepower figure and production number. But I'll remember Ollie. I'll remember Ricardo tending the grill. I'll remember stories about grandkids, road trips, old friends, and future adventures. And maybe that's the magic hidden inside these gatherings. A field full of machinery somehow becomes a collection of human stories. And every now and then, a warm Saturday morning in Clovis, California, you leave with a few more friends than you arrive with. And that's a pretty good trade. You know, if you've watched this show before, you've probably heard me compare favorite cars to favorite underwear. And if you haven't, if this is your first episode, welcome. Things don't always make sense around here. But this Shelby has become a lot like one of my 7 pairs of underwear. Comfortable in its complete non-comfortable approach to life. Familiar, reliable, always there when you need it. After all these years, I know exactly what this car is going to do. And that is a comforting thing. The world changes, people change, technology changes. This Shelby still wakes up every morning with exactly the same bad attitude he had in 1965. A year ago, this car was the subject of its very first episode. Today, the subject of another. Still introducing me to people, still taking me places I never expected to go. We've both come a long way since then. May the road rise up to meet you and the stories follow you home. I'll see you next week.